Welcome back to Broncos Beat. Alexis Perry here alongside James Palmer, Cecil Lammey, and Les Shapiro. Last segment, we talked about some of the memorable moments of Mike Shanahan's career here in Denver, but his legacy goes far beyond the Denver Broncos. James, in your opinion, what have been some of Shanahan's greatest contributions to the National Football League?
Well, I think, Alexis, you look at the system that he runs, and we touched on it in the first block, but in the world that we live in now, with Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson and all these quarterbacks throwing the football all over the place, it's a run-heavy system that is still feared throughout the entire league. If you talk to defensive coordinators and you talk to offensive minds, defense coordinators will tell you, if this is run perfectly, and that is the organization buying in, the coaching staff buying in, and the players buying in to run this system, it is virtually unstoppable. And to have that be a system that is still being used today as the NFL continues to go through all of these evolving changes and all these new offensive minds that change everything, to have a basis that is still used by a lot of teams. And if they can't defend it, what usually happens when I talk to those teams, they bring in an offensive mind that's from it to help their team because they've had trouble stopping it. You saw Mike Vrabel do that when he had trouble stopping it when he went to Tennessee. So you look at guys and the way it's impacted hiring around the league because of the way this system is run, and it's still today, even though the league has changed so much, I think that's a remarkable impact on the way the game is played.
Well, and let's remember who was doing it with RG3 and the Washington Redskins back in 2012.
Right,
RG3's
and had the Legion of
year.
Boom on the ropes in the playoffs, by the way.
Right. I mean, he was running an RPO back then because he had to, again, adapting to his player's skill set and taking a rookie quarterback in RG3 who really couldn't throw from the pocket and getting him to the playoffs his rookie season.
I'll go to the mentality because I read this book every single year.
There it is.
Think like a champion, right? I get to throw in a prop and written by Adam Schefter. It's Mike Shanahan's book. It's a mentality that he brings to the table that has filtered through the entire National Football League and certainly under his coaching trees. We see it with multiple teams implementing this. And it's that discipline that Les has talked about for so long. And of course, James brought it up as well, because when you have a West Coast and a zone blocking system, you are basically forcing the defense to lack discipline and you're waiting for that one spot because as a running back, you have three choices. You can bend, bang, or bounce on one carry. It can be the same carry, the same look, the same flow. There's one entry point. And at that entry point, you can make one decision based on what they're doing, what the defense does, where they break down. And that's what's truly special about that system and why so many other teams now have implemented that through the Shanahan tree.
And you mentioned that tree, Cecil. I mean, think about it. Kyle Shanahan. All these guys learned at his knee. Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, Brian Flores, Anthony Lynn with the Chargers, the head coach there, Matt LaFleur with the Green Bay Packers. 5 current head coaches.
Gary Kubiak.
Yeah, Gary Kubiak. Art Shell was the head coach of the Raiders and worked under Mike in Oakland. So there are 5 current head coaches and a couple of former head coaches who have all had a lot of success, and I'm guessing we'll have a lot more success as we go forward. There are going to be more Super Bowl appearances and more Super Bowl victories from the guys who learned under Mike Shanahan.
Is that the most underrated coaching tree in the National Football League?
Well, I'm going to go with Andy Reid's tree a little bit because he's had some success. It's underrated because I don't think Mike's is underrated. That's kind of the point I'm making. I think people look at all of these guys and what they've done and they've adapted what he's done. I think you have to go and look at who do we think is the greatest coach of all time, right? Many people say Bill Belichick. Terrible tree. I mean, just awful. Just there's no success coming out of that building. So I think you have to show the impact because Andy Reid is like this as well. You teach your lower guys and the guys that are beneath you how to succeed, and then they go and succeed. He created an environment specifically in Washington, as Les brought up, Matt LaFleur and Sean McVay and Kyle, that he wanted to create competition. And these offensive gurus wanted to compete with each other in practice about who could come up with this and maybe twisting it here. And that competition made all of them better coaches. He wanted that competition because he wanted all them to get better. And the most interesting story about Mike and the way Kyle interacted is he didn't want Kyle to work for him. Even though Kyle wanted to work for him, he did not allow Kyle to work for him until he was running an offense on his own, making the play calls, and that offense needed to be a top 5 offense before he let Kyle work for him because he was afraid of nepotism. I think that shows how he wants people to work underneath him.
Les, you mentioned that Mike Shanahan is done coaching. So how long until he is in the Hall of Fame?
Well, that's not necessarily up to Mike.
Right.
I think the organization is going to get behind a campaign to get Mike a gold jacket, and I think he's certainly deserving. Look, we just saw Jimmy Johnson and Bill Cowher go in. Mike's resume is just as sparkling as theirs. We know that Marv Levy and Tony Dungy are in the Hall. Mike's resume is better than theirs. I'm sorry to say, it's better than theirs. And then you've got guys like Mike Holmgren being talked about, Dick Vermeil being talked about as candidates for the Hall, and Mike's resume exceeds theirs as well. So it's a matter of time. We know how the NFL, we know how the Pro Football Hall of Fame works. You got to get in line.
Atwater.
You got to get in line. Steve Atwater, Shannon Sharp, all these guys had to get in line.
Gradishar.
Exactly. So it's just a matter of time. But Mike ought to get in. It's going to be very, very important that the organization get behind him in a very supportive and a very strong manner. We know that helps.
It is a quarterback-driven league, and as Les has always said, Mike Shanahan is the ultimate quarterback whisperer.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's something that kind of highlights in today's NFL, like James said, with Pat Mahomes and all these guys lighting up the league. Well, you've got to know how to get the best out of those QBs.
Can I throw one stat at you as far as quarterback whisperer goes? If a quarterback started for Mike Shanahan for 2 years or more, he went to the Pro Bowl. Mike Shanahan sent 6 quarterbacks to the Pro Bowl. John Elway, Steve Young, Jake Plummer, Brian Griese, Jay Cutler, and RG3. And RG3 did it as a rookie who couldn't throw from the pocket and had 6 new starters on offense with that Redskins team. So to me, he is the ultimate quarterback whisperer.
Speaks volumes for sure. All right, you guys, coming up after the break, we will have the latest on the Justin Simmons franchise tag situation. Don't go anywhere.